versus you. It's you 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 versus you. Time to clear your mental, everything you've been through. Looking in the mirror like you're the one with the issues. You against yourself, feel like you against the world. Internally battling all of the trauma, you struggle to manage it. Gotta seek help for the damages. It's you versus you, now go and handle it. It's you versus you, let's get ahead of it. It's you versus you, let's clear our heads of it. I'm so good now, I feel good now. The baggage put down, just let me live. Just let me live. Now my mind's clear. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you.
What's up, everybody? I'm Saquon, and we're back with a new episode of the You versus You podcast. We're going to have a conversation today about catharsis. I referenced catharsis in several episodes in the past. Let me define catharsis for the purpose of today's conversation. Catharsis, the definition of it is the releasing of or the relief of old, strong, repressed emotions. And we're going to try to produce that organically in real time today. But prior to doing so, I want to put forth a couple of disclaimers. I've said this in the past, but it's applicable for today's conversation as well. I am not a clinical psychologist, nor am I a licensed practitioner. I'm not a therapist or any of that. In fact, my overall goal, one of the goals of the podcast, is to get people to the point to where they feel comfortable to be able to have a free initial consultation with an actual licensed therapist and hopefully begin their therapeutic journeys. So again, I am not a licensed practitioner. Another disclaimer is because of the capacity with my guest, both he and I are in, I want to put forth and express the fact that the views expressed on this particular podcast are our views alone, and they are in no way a reflection of Highmark Residential. So, with all that being said, I'm excited about today's episode because I'm introducing a brother that I actually work with. He and I have a budding relationship, and I'm excited about the conversation that we'll bring forth to you all today. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce Brother Justice Bradley.
Hey, Saquon, how you
Welcome to the
doing?
show, champ. I'm
Thank you.
good.
I'm glad to be
You
here.
doing all right?
Yes, sir. I'm great. How
My
about you?
man, I'm wonderful.
It's good to hear.
Excited to dive into this conversation. So, I referenced a moment ago that you and I actually work together, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it's a new relationship. Um, I don't like to say that people work for me. I like to say that people work with me.
Yes, sir.
We're teammates. And in that regard, we're accountable to one another. So, how's that experience been for you so far?
My experience working with you has been nothing short of great. You've shown me.
You don't have to bullshit on the podcast. You can be 100% honest.
Oh no, no, no. Honestly, you have been a role model that I've always been needing, especially in this line of work. You're showing me a lot of things. You're leading me into the right place. So I'm enjoying that. I'm actually having a great time working under you and working alongside of you.
I appreciate you saying those things. And I think that that's a good segue into what we're going to get into today. You and I think that you have tons of potential, particularly being a young brother, 28 years old, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? In this business, but not just in this business. Like you can do anything that you want to do in life. But I believe that this particular playing field is spiritually and organically designed to show you that you can do anything that you want to do in life,
Right.
particularly when considering your where you come from,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
And I say that to say because I've noticed your potential, and it's been a blast working with you, right? And but what led to this today was you and I had to have conversation. I had to voice not a concern, but an observation.
Right.
And that conversation stemmed to be, it turned into about maybe 45 minutes to an hour impromptu.
Yes.
And it was needed at the time. And we actually had to pull away from an engagement, which was very important. But I felt like that observation needed to be addressed at that moment. And then in the midst of that conversation, the wheels in my head began turning. And I said, you know what? Perhaps a conversation here outside of our vocation would be beneficial.
Yeah.
And you consented to do that.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be here, be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely. So tell the viewership a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Justice Bradley, originally born in Detroit, Michigan. I'm
Shout to the D.
Shout out to the D. I'm 28 years old, born September 25th, 1996. Um, I'm the youngest of four, have two older sisters and an older brother. And me personally, call myself a traveler because I've been on a long journey. Uh, Journey has been nothing short of a lesson. Um, I deal with some family issues, some trauma issues, some self issues, but that's a part of who I am today. That's part of who I'm building to be. So that's just a little bit about me. And I'm also an Army veteran. So shout out to all my veterans.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your service as well. So, growing up the youngest of four, you witnessed your fair share of trauma.
Yes, sir.
Would you mind sharing a little bit of
Yeah, I don't mind. Growing up in Detroit, Michigan, um, I've seen homelessness, domestic violence, uh, just a bunch of family dysfunction. I witnessed my mom be beat halfway to death. Uh, I've witnessed us live in shelters, cars, of course with family, but even then, family's not always the most welcoming. But that's a little bit of that trauma that I've had to deal with growing up as a young brother of three other siblings. Yeah.
when you began to encounter or experience rather these traumatic experiences? I know you say that you're the youngest of four, but at what age were you specifically?
I was around maybe 7, 8 years old when I started to realize, or started to notice what was going on within my family. Um, I didn't really know how to understand it at that time. But all I know is it was affecting not just myself, but my siblings, my mom, and also my father. It was affecting everyone around us. So I was, yeah, around 7, 8 years old, right before we moved to Georgia.
Now, as a 7 or 8 year old experiencing such harsh epigenetic influences, how did you, are you even willing to, or not even willing, but able to, because it was such a young age, explain how you were internalizing these experiences? Did you feel like they were your fault? Or
In some ways, yes. Well, a lot of ways, yes. Because my father is actually my only father. Like I'm an only child on his side. My siblings have their own dad. So a lot of the things that was done by my father, they looked at me like it was my fault. Um, Although I kind of knew it wasn't my fault, but it felt like that. I witnessed the things that my father did to our mother. So honestly, the outside looking in, I probably would have thought it was my fault too. As a sibling, because it's your dad, then I would have thought it was my fault. Or at least had something to say about like, hey, this is your dad. he made this life for us. He did these things. He got us to this place where we're at now. Yeah, it's your fault. You're his only seed. And from that, it kind of isolated me from my siblings. I love them to death. They love us, so we have a great relationship. But that was something that needed to be, you know, fronted in the long run because, like I said, I felt like it was my fault for a long time.
How old were your siblings in relation to your age at 7 years old?
My oldest sister had to be around maybe 12, 13 because she was in junior high. Um, so she might have been 14, 15. Then my second oldest sister, she had to be at least 13. My brother had to be at least 10.
Gotcha. And so the father, you were his only child within that dynamic,
Yes.
sired child.
Yeah, I'm his only child.
And your mom, what was your relationship like with her?
Um, Me and my mom we had a good relationship. No, nothing out of the ordinary. She did the things a mother should do for her children, which is something I always admired. So yeah, we haven't had a bad relationship. Of course, every child not going to understand why the parent does certain things. So that was something I never held against my mother. So yeah, we have a great relationship.
And you had a great relationship during that time frame,
During that time frame, yes, because all we knew, I was loving her unconditionally. We saw the things that we were going through, so we wanted to show her love just like she showed us love, even though she was going through it personally. So we had a great relationship.
so the fact that the two of you had a great relationship, the fits of domestic violence, how would that impact you?
Seeing someone that cared for you, birthed you, um, provide for you, get hurt like that is just devastating. Mm. And it happened on a few occasions, not just from my father, but seeing that'll leave a traumatic. It, it kind of scarred me. More,
Scarred you?
yeah, more like a brand.
A
You know,
brand?
like when fraternity
Explain.
get branded,
Yeah.
how it felt. So it's something I'll never forget. It's permanent, and it's permanent because I know both of my parents are alive, but that's something I think about every day, every day.
And when you think about this every day, what are the thoughts that you're thinking? And what is your inner voice saying to
Oh, mm. My first initial thought is always anger, thinking I can go back and maybe change what may have happened, or at least stepped in to do what most people probably wouldn't have.
you? Which is,
Protect your mother, at least especially as a child. You know, I wish I probably could have stepped in her place.
and it seems like you carry this perceived fault or perceived inadequacy with you to this very day.
Do do. Um, Nowadays it's not more of in a negative light, but it stays with me. Let me know, hey, this is something that you'll never do. This is something that was always wrong. And he got away when we were so young, didn't know what was going on. For real, all we knew was someone that we loved was getting hurt. So it stays with me, yes. But nowadays, just in a more Um, it's not a positive light, more of a mm, what would you say, like a help or not? It's helping me to actually cross that barrier because I know it's there. I know it happened. It's pushing me. It's forcing me to confront it. You know, it's like it's being more of a teacher than anything.
Gotcha. So at 7 years old, you're dealing with, from what you're telling me, my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, several conflicts here.
Yes.
You have
Mm,
the strong devotion and love for your mother. You have the respect, adherence, deference to your father. You have the animosity that you're encountering from your siblings because he is only your father.
yes, sir.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And this is a pain, again, that you continue to carry with you to this very day.
Yes, sir.
The fact that you weren't, in your words, able to protect your mother, how does that make you feel?
Hmm. Not deserving. Sometimes.
Deserving of what?
Okay.
Have you ever felt like you weren't deserving of life?
Occasionally. Sometimes. Well, yeah. I definitely felt like I wasn't deserving of life because there was times where she could have been healed. She couldn't be here right now. And then if no one had to stop stepped in, then she wouldn't be here. So 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 now, like I said sometimes, yeah, not now, but back then in my early teens, early 20s, I did feel undeserving of being her son, undeserving of being here on earth.
Are your parents still alive to this day?
Yes, sir.
And
My
what
dad lives in Texas, and my mom, she lives in Macon, Georgia, along with the rest of my siblings.
and what type of relationship do you have with each of them individually?
Honestly, my siblings are like my best friends now. Um, that helped a lot, but they're like my best friends now. We have our sibling issues, of course, what family doesn't, but it's not to that capacity. We all are more than mature and adults enough to understand what was happening and that it wasn't nothing. We couldn't stop it per se as kids, as they were teenagers and I was a young child. But our relationship now is a lot better than what it
And what about with your mother and father?
was. My mother, we still have that same great relationship, open. We talk, and also with my dad. Now that he has confronted his issues, we have a better relationship. Um, so we've been on the up and up since I want to say I was a since I was a sophomore in high school. But you know, I've had the chance to talk to him about it. There was some occasions where he didn't want to talk about it, but we talked about it some, and he was telling me the things that he had to do in order to change himself.
Such as,
Well, similar to my situation. He going to therapy. He went to therapy, and he also found a hobby to help him process the things that he was going through. Because, like I said, we never knew what he may have been going through. We don't know. We just knew something was wrong on all ends. But he changed himself. Well, he worked on himself, and he was able to change to show himself in a better light than what was shown when we were kids.
so homelessness, domestic violence beginning around about the age of 7, and also the confusion and disconnect with you and your siblings as a result of the dynamic between you and your dad. How long did that last? Up until what age?
I want to say to about the age of 15, going to 16. Yeah, because I was just starting high school. Really, my mom, for some reason, she let my dad actually come to Georgia and stay with us for about 6 months during my first few semesters of school.
And you were at what age?
And this was I was a freshman
Mm.
going into sophomore, so I was about 14, 15.
Okay, so that suggests to me that there was a period of separation between your father and your mother.
Yes,
Over how long?
so they split. Once we moved moved to Georgia in 2005, they had officially split. And I didn't get to high school until 2010. So that was my first time seeing my dad since. She let him actually stay for a few months, and during that time, he apologized to not only my mother but to us. Um, he actually showed me he was trying to show me how to process those things. Even though he had just started processing it himself,
Right.
he just wanted to show us that he had started his change. So yeah, she let him move down for about 6 months, and then from there he left. After
Internally, how did you feel that she let him move back in?
confused, I was I didn't know how to feel because I missed my father, but also I didn't miss the things that we were going through. Um, and this I missed my father because I'm his only child. That was who I'm used to being around. That's who I was always around. So I missed him. So it was a very confusing emotion. It was surreal. It was at that age, I didn't really know I didn't know what to think. I was just confused. Like, why would she even let him here? Because at that moment I wasn't thinking about him being here either. So obviously that was a conversation they had outside of us. So as far as him coming down, um, I just didn't understand.
So if I were to ask you, the most impactful, the source of trauma, like would this be the most significant source of trauma that you encountered in your upbringing?
Yes, but it's not. It's one particular instance that happened that this is the one that played over and over. Uh, when I said my mother probably could have died, it wasn't a lie. I'll never forget my mother being dragged out of the house into the front yard. Um, I'm there. My siblings are on the porch. I remember this like it's yesterday. My dad turned to me. He said, "Hey son, go get me a ice." Meanwhile, he's holding it. The thing in me wanted to do what my dad said. That's my father, but it was something in me that was like, "No, don't do it."
And you were what age when this occurred?
Mm. I'm still 7. This is before, right before we moved to Georgia. This was the, this was the breaking point. This was the point that my mom was like, "We gotta go." Um, that was that one instant that stuck with me.
The your inner monologue, your negative self-talk. When this voice talks to you, whose voice do you hear?
For a long time, I didn't know. Um, until maybe more recently, I realized that the voice inside of me that was talking to me, in my mind, it was a better version of my father because I wanted to see him in a better light versus what he was showing us. I always want to think, oh, that's my dad. That's the one I can look up to. That's my superhero. That's him. But like I said, it sounded like him every time. Just a better version.
And you said that being exposed to this type of negativity obviously took hard effect on you, but it lasted up into your 20s and you didn't realize it.
Yes. Yeah.
So explain to me what that process was like, if you would.
Going into my 20s, at the age of 19, I got married to my high school sweetheart. Um, this is prior to me going into the military. But, as us being 19 years old, don't know nothing about life, nothing about being an adult, being mature, being in a real relationship. Um, we moved down to Louisiana where I was stationed, and I started to notice that I had traits of my father when it came to arguments, even when it came to criticism from the person that I loved at the time. So I didn't really know how to deal with that. So I began to see certain aspects of him in me:
Violence,
violence, um,
verbal, physical, both.
both, honestly. Um, it was something that I had never experienced before, never had done, but it scared me when it happened. It was more like, who is this guy? I didn't even recognize myself, but it it stuck with me, and I started realizing, more and more every time we would have an argument. It wasn't necessarily physical violence, but towards her, I always had to punch a wall, or it was something I had to do in order to release that anger, or those emotions.
In those moments, what did you see internally, mentally?
There was times where I saw nothing, just black, and there was times where I saw a younger me looking at me like I was my father back then. And this was like, and that's when I started realizing, like, well, for one, I already knew it wasn't right because I've seen it, but it made me realize that that effect that it had on me was, it had a strong hold on me to the point to where it was almost consuming me, to where I was turning into him.
How long were you married?
2 years, rightfully so, given the dynamics of what was going on between me and her. You know, uh, 2 years. That 2 years, it was a long 2 years, but it was a good teacher. My first real situation, that I went through as far as dealing with my own emotions, dealing with my own trauma that I had. First real situation that made me open my eyes. Just I was still young, so I was like 20, going into 2021, still real young. Still had that mindset of a child at that time.
Now, you said for a while you felt like you couldn't talk to anyone. You kept all of these emotions repressed and bottled in, and it took you to a dark place.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't talk because I couldn't talk to my siblings because I didn't want them to think I was just like them. Couldn't talk to my mom. I didn't want her to look at me any type of way, given the things that she went through with my father. I didn't want her to look at me in a different light, as far as like, oh well, you just like your daddy, things like that. Sometimes those type of things are said within families when it comes to you portraying some of the actions that a significant person may have done. You know, sent me into a real dark place because I started being more depressed. Um, and around this time, I had got out of the army. You know,
Honorably discharged?
yes, I really discharged, no dishonorable. But it sent me to a dark place. I was lonely. I was depressed, angry, and I felt like there was nothing else for me.
And was this during the 2 year marriage?
No, this was after the 2 year marriage. We got divorced in 2017. I had just got out of the military, and we moved back to Macon. We lived together on the east side of Macon, but we decided to part ways. Even though it wasn't a messy divorce, thank God, but we did that for the sake of us, because I put her through some things, and I still had some things that I needed to deal with personally that wasn't ready to be, or that I hadn't yet expressed to anyone.
Your mother and father, were they married?
If they were married,
And you were married from 19 to 21.
1920.
All right, so back to your dark place.
That dark place came in the form of suicide. Suicide. My best friend, if it weren't for him, mm, I tried, had guns in my mouth, knives to my wrist. Mm, My best friend stopped me both times. So I placed that. I never want to be again. Having to deal with I had to confront even trying to commit suicide with myself. That was another thing that added to everything that was going on because I had to confront it. And confronting that meaning I had to confront my emotions, what I was dealing with. I had to confront, I had to learn to forgive. I had to learn to forgive myself for the things that I couldn't control. And at the time, my best friend's grandfather was alive. So with my best friend, got me through that situation. His grandfather sat me down and helped me. He told me that I'm gonna have to defend those things because if not, it's gonna consume me, which it almost did. You know.
And you said that you have a great relationship with your mom now. You have a strong relationship with your siblings.
Yes.
You have a good relationship with your dad. But you mentioned something. You said that your family doesn't think that you remember anything due to you being the youngest, but you remember everything. And going into your 24th birthday, that was a cathartic time for you. Can you unpack a little bit of that?
Yes. So my siblings, they've said this on numerous occasions. When he was so young, he was so young. When this happened, I'm like, but me being that young, my subconscious kind of retained all of it, even though I didn't really understand what was going on. And from like when I with that, because I remember everything, it was I was that's what was causing me to relive all those things, not only in my personal life, but mentally also, emotionally also. Like it was wearing on. But going into my 24th birthday, I had to, wow, I did, I had to, but I had a thought that I wanted to be whole again. I wanted to feel like I wanted to feel lighter on my feet. I wanted to be able to do things or and not feel the traumas of my past. I wanted to release those emotions. I wanted to be able to forgive not only my father, um, I wanted to be able to forgive myself, you know, just because I did feel like it was my fault. And I know I had to release that also. Because if I would kept thinking it was my fault, the darker I probably would have been in an even darker place because of that, if I would have let it hold on to me like that. So that was when I decided to change. I seeked out therapy at the VA because I'm military and they was offering counseling classes. I started the classes, but in the beginning, I just didn't know how to talk. I was so used to suppressing everything to where it just comes out at the wrong time or at the wrong moment. And therapy helped me talk about it. I'll give it maybe the first 4 sessions was probably just nothing but silence. To where I just wanted to sit there, just be around. But the therapist he was telling me, he said, sitting here not talking is not gonna help. Um, he was willing to sit there and just be quiet, which is crazy. Therapists they talk. This is what they do. But he let me sit there and just be quiet. 4 sessions. And then he said, you're gonna have to talk eventually. And that next session, it's like we started packing just a little bit. I told him same things I'm telling you, but and I released maybe about 30% of trauma. And that's my fault. It was only 30% because I went in with the mindset of I'm talking to a stranger. I don't really want them to know all my business. I don't want them to know what I've been through. I don't want them to look at me like I'm that stereotypical child that grew up in a bad home. So that was more so my reasoning for just being quiet until I just talk, say something, answer one question he asked you. Then I answered it and just went from there. And being able to release even that little bit felt great. Mm, Excuse me, I'm sorry. It felt great releasing that. It it let me know that um it let me know that releasing it is okay. Processing your traumas, your emotions is okay. It's not unmanly to be vulnerable to someone emotionally or verbally, to just let them know what you've been through, who you are. And like I said, that was definitely probably one of my mindsets, like men don't cry. This is not what men do. Men stand up, men hold it in, men just keep pushing. But in reality, a man really, most men probably just need to let go of what's holding on to them. And that was that first step. That's what took me into my journey now.
And that was cathartic. And in the midst of that,
Mm.
there was still, based on your account, too much negativity around you. And so you started separating yourself from people that you had been around for 20 plus years, and trying to put yourself around people that change, that wanted the type of change and the type of life that ultimately you wanted. Is that correct?
Yes. Um, Coming up, I've always been one of the people who I didn't never follow the crowd, but because I was known by everyone from sports and various activities I did throughout school, I was hanging out in places where I shouldn't have been. I was always around the drugs, the alcohol, fussing, fighting, cussing. I was around those things at a young age as a teenager going into my 20s. And in my 20s, it kind of got a little bit worse only because nobody telling me, hey, you got to come in at this time. Nobody telling me, hey, no, you can't go here this weekend. You got to stay in the house. So I was always somewhere around people that I shouldn't have been. And it not necessarily um like bad activities. No, some people have bad energy that was just rubbing off on me also. Some people may have been dealing with the same thing and weren't processing it. And and it just kept me where I was at because I knew, or internally I felt like they were the same as me and they were dealing with some stuff. So I kept myself around that group of people, and I kept going out trying to suppress the feelings with drinking and things like that, partying just, but still inside I felt lonely. Still inside I felt like nothing was helping. I feel like that wasn't helping. So I moved. Um, for around this time, me and my best friend were living together. We lived together for a total of about 3 years. And we worked at Walmart together. We literally did everything together. Club together, travel together, work together. We was always around each other. And I knew for a fact he was around the life that I was trying to get away from. So I end up just start looking to move, just separate myself. At first I stopped communicating with him more. Like I kept it to a minimum. Even though we lived together, I was like, what's up, bro? And I keep it moving. And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? That's not enough. I need to physically move. Let me remove my presence from this area. I removed my presence and moved to North Macon, where I then began searching for new jobs. And when I got into the leasing field, just to get away out of where I was at, because a lot of people I was hanging out with was at work, which is like I can't explain it. It was at work, and we was all doing the wrong things outside of work. And, and I changed, and I moved on from that. And I moved and I got into the leasing field, was able to put myself around people who wanted change, who wanted to grow, who actually been through the same things that I've gone through. Um, they helped me go to my next step, along with my father. Um, they showed me what it was like to be changed, what it was like to be renewed, be fresh. So that helped me a lot. It gave me a vision, something to see in the future. And my dad, and I thank God for his growth. He told me, we on the phone, he asked me, what is it that you do to decompress? What is it that helps you relieve outside of talking? And I didn't have an answer for him, not at all, because clubbing, drinking, fornication, all that type of things was my life before this point. It was so I had no answer for him. I couldn't talk to him and say, hey, well, I do this in order to relieve. I go to the gym, I go jog, I box, I play pool, anything. I had nothing. And his suggestion was find a hobby. His hobby, come to find out, was martial arts. You know, and given his history, I would say it was a good outlet for him. So, and I knew I needed to find my outlet. Um, so I started skating. It was a something that I've done as a kid, but not necessarily as a hobby. So I got into it, started skating, learning, and I felt free. I've never felt more free in my life, honestly, because I was able to, I let tears out skating, like just off of a movement, just feel like I'm free, just feel like I don't have nothing else to worry about, able to forgive myself, able to think about the things that I need to process during that time of me out there roller skating by myself with headphones in, no interruptions. So it helped me to process some of my emotions and actually learn to release them. And I actually released them through emotion because I wasn't a crier. I wasn't somebody who would shed a tear. I was a hard body. But when that first time I just broke down on some skates, would have never thought, not justice, but it happened. And at that moment, I was, this is it. This is my hobby. This is the one for me. So now I skate like a that's on my schedule weekly, twice a week. So yeah, that's I'm sorry, man.
No,
Yeah,
please do not apologize. Back to the army. How long were you in the army?
I did one contract in the army equivalent of 4 years.
And at what
But
age did you go?
fresh out of high school, I was 17.
Fresh out of
But
high
I had
school.
to wait to go to basic training until I was 18. But I went ahead and enlisted, and then when I turned 18, I went ahead and swore in, and I left. Turned 18 September 25th. I was out of Macon, Georgia, November the 17th. That was another way of me separating myself from where I was. Um, I tried. Even in the military, I was still kind of that same hard body, don't talk, which in some ways it affected my military career, but I'm just glad it didn't affect it in the wrong way. I've had some disciplinary issues in the military based off of my emotions and not being able to properly convey them to people. Like, so I was a hothead going in. I was, and honestly, I was disrespectful, um, even to my superiors. I was physically disrespectful, where we would actually get into physical altercations. So it helped me separate it, but that taught me discipline. It throughout that whole journey, like, and they never gave up on me, which was crazy. They never said, "Hey, we just gonna go ahead and kick him." They didn't do that. Through our basic training, when I got to my first duty station, they didn't do that. So I'm thankful for that. Honestly, thankful.
You know, I feel compelled to thank you, man. Looking at you and listening to you, I see myself in two lights. The first light, which is the reason why I'm offering my heartfelt, sincere thank you, is the fact that you trust me enough to come here on my platform and share this story with me and my viewership. Lets me know how you see me. I also see myself in your light because a lot of your story is strikingly similar to mine. I think it's important for you to understand, champ, that what happened to your mother is not your fault.
Yes, sir.
It's not your fault.
Yes, sir. I believe.
Do you know that?
I've been able to start really, really actually believing that and focusing on that to actually help me change because once I realized that it was a lot more weight off my shoulders per se, you know.
So I think that you're in a space now, and I'm no guru. We all have our shit.
Right.
It's a journey, not a process. Excuse me, it's a process. It's a journey and it's not a destination. This thing is a continual process.
Yeah.
I had a refractory period this week where I had a human experience,
Right.
right? Became emotionally, lost myself, right? So on and so forth. But I say that to you because I feel like, my man, you're walking around with a lot of baggage that isn't yours. And it's time to let that baggage go. You're not 7 years old, okay? So your prefrontal cortex, right?
Right.
That's the front of your brain, right here, okay? That's responsible. This area of your brain right here is responsible for your critical and reflexive thinking. This area of the brain gives you the ability to take external stimulus, shit that happens to you on the outside or happens to people that you love, right? And subject it to scrutiny, question it,
Right.
observe it intently, critically,
Yes, sir.
before internalizing it, okay?
Yes, sir.
So you were at an age where you were internalizing things without having the ability to subject it to scrutiny.
Right.
First thing I learned in therapy is thoughts and control and responsibility and accountability,
Right.
right?
Yes, sir.
And there are things that you're walking around accepting full responsibility and accountability for that you had and still have no control over. And it's difficult, but it's also as simple as becoming aware of that and making the conscious cathartic decision to drop that bag, right?
Yes, sir.
In addition to your moms, I feel like they're, and like
Mm.
again, I want to put a disclaimer out there, I'm not a licensed practitioner, I'm not a licensed therapist.
Mm.
I feel like you developed an ideation, a savior's complex, right? A lot of us young brothers do with regard to our mothers when we grow up in low social economic conditions and they're subjected to domestic violence, substance abuse, and the like, right? We internalize it. It's our fault, and I need to be the savior, right?
Yes.
So, by definition, a savior's complex is an overwhelming desire to fulfill someone else's needs, even at the expense of my own needs.
You hit the nail on the head with that.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So, and then see these thoughts, these concepts, this is real life. So, they're organic. So, they grow. The idea of it grows as you grow.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Then there was an issue with socialization in your story, right? Because you felt like you were persecuted, for lack of a better term, by your siblings because you had a father and they didn't have a father.
That definitely. Mm,
And then you took the brunt of that on your shoulders as well. And that ate at you.
right.
And this began shaping your identity, right?
Yes, sir.
And this is around about the time that your inner voice started. And then the voice that you were hearing was the father that you wanted your father to be,
Yes, sir.
juxtaposed with the visual image of the father that you would actually see, which created more confusion as you went into your adolescence.
I believe that. I'm at that confusion. Mm,
And this takes you through your adolescence. And then you get married. But you took into your marriage, a series of psychological presets or learned behaviors from your environment.
yes, sir.
All right. And you learned some pretty shitty behaviors,
To say the least.
right?
Shit, it might be an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's good that it makes you chuckle because freedom is many things, but we have to be able to accept that we're the villain in some stories, but love ourselves enough to not allow ourselves to remain in purgatory. If that stove over there doesn't work, it's not hopelessly irredeemable. It's not evil. It's not going to hell.
Yes, sir.
The infinite switch doesn't work. So it's malfunction. It's dysfunction,
Right.
right?
Yes, sir.
But if I change the infinite switch, then it functions properly.
Well, should.
We have to get to the space to where we can categorize the things that we've gone through as dysfunction, but be strong enough and willing to go on the necessary steps, the necessary journey to be able to acquire the tools in our toolbox to be able to correct that dysfunction. And I could tell that that's something that you have been willing to do for quite some time.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
I'm definitely trying to put in efforts towards that. Like every day, the journey don't stop. Don't stop.
Absolutely not. So in the military, or even prior to the military, when you said that you were a hothead, right? Like I have the propensity to be a hothead. I've been a hothead for a huge portion of my life, right? Because it's suppressed emotions. And that's why this particular episode is aptly titled Catharsis, because it's the releasing of repressed emotions,
Right. Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
And a great thing about you is you're willing to share your story. But while sharing your story, right, you're still overcome with emotion, which is a great thing, right? But it's also an indicator that there are still some emotions that are repressed, right? And you have to be able to forgive yourself first and foremost. You have to forgive your traumatizing influences, your father, your mother, your siblings, right?
And also my peers.
Your peers,
So, yes, sir.
and be thankful for the experience because the experience ultimately helps to shape who you are. And you have sole possession of the paintbrush of writing the rest of your story.
trying to feel that way every day, at least more and more. I ain't complete yet, but I'm almost.
So with the army experience, yeah, we have repressed emotions, so you're a hothead, but it's exacerbated, right?
Right.
Because you referenced the fact that your dad was in karate, right?
Yeah.
Martial arts, you said.
Yes, sir. Marshall.
It's a physical discipline, and that's very important, right? Because that's in a lot of ways psychologically an introduction to your shadow self. But and I'm going to explain that your experience going into the armed forces is sort of similar because both experiences teaches you about your capacity to be dangerous, right?
They do. Yes, sir.
Which
Completely
was
right.
incredibly influential for you because you felt defenseless when your mother was being abused.
Definitely felt this could not help. Never felt so helpless in my life.
Right. So a lot of those repressed emotions, a lot of those pressurized emotions that causes one to become a hothead and just blow up in situations come from experiences like that. I've had them myself. I failed it much. You mentioned a moment ago. There's true freedom in accepting that you're the villain in some stories. Some of the things that we do are irreprehensible. Are horrible. But there's data in that, right?
Right.
Yeah, you feel like shit. You feel like crap, right?
Right.
And then, even in the moment, and even shortly after the moment, an apology is really a selfish act, right? Because I'm only apologizing. Yeah, I mean, I know what I did was fucked up, right?
Right.
But I'm really only apologizing because I want to return immediately back to the state
We
that
were.
we were in prior to the infraction.
Yes, sir. Mm.
True cathartic change and subsequent apology is in the change behavior. It's in the process that you're presently undergoing. So if you take that data and you take those experiences and you become better as a result of it,
Mm.
that's the truest, most authentic apology there is. And on the other side of that bridge of transformation,
Mm-hmm.
some of those relationships will remain. They may not be the same capacity of relationship,
Right.
but no one will discredit your healing journey, providing what they see is true and authentic. The hobby that you found something that you can love completely uninhibited and express creativity, which is the opposite of the fight or flight state that you've been in for your entire life. You've been in
Completely.
survival for your entire life, and you operated in every aspect or capacity in your life from that survival state, which was a recipe for disaster to begin with.
Yeah, you're right about that. Disaster is what happened.
But here's the thing: grace. You can't fault yourself because you didn't know any better. You had an operating manual and you utilized that and you didn't have anything else.
Right.
So I think it's okay to stop subjecting yourself to this self imposed persecution. And the way that you do that, which is the first thing or the second thing I learned in therapy, but I left it purposely for this moment, because now it's time for you to start challenging your inner critic, that voice that you hear in your head. And you got to say, says who? When you hear something in your head that's a limited belief, that's something contrary to the justice that you see yourself as being, says who? According to whom? Challenge, reason with your inner critic. And don't just accept what your inner critic says to you as being true. Well, I ain't shit. All of this was my fault. I ain't never gonna be shit. I was married once, I'm incapable of. I failed, now I'm incapable of having a successful relationship. All of these different things. You have to challenge that. I had to do that myself this week. We all have human experiences. This is a journey, not a destination. And then you got to get into your shadow work, which we'll talk about later on offline. Because you have to take aspects of your dark personality, right? And you have to engineer that into an ordered personality. And you have to reconcile the self. Reconciling the self doesn't just mean overcoming emotions and being zen. Reconciling the self also has a shadow work component. This is Carl Jung's work, okay? I'm charismatic. I'm a leader. I speak exceptionally well. I motivate. I give to no end. But I'm also a fucking monster that adheres to principle. And those things will be shown if crossed in that way. I had to reconcile that. I ran from that because I couldn't control my emotions. Similar to you, there were so many things in my life that I had to reconcile. It's a journey, not a destination, but I'm living proof that it can be done. And I always say I have a fiduciary responsibility to our brothers. It's an honor and a pleasure to work with you. And I promise you I'll always be there to help you help yourself.
Yes, sir. Well, I like to help me help myself. I don't want no handouts. I need to do it alone. I need to confront it.
Listen, if you found value here, and it's my sincere hope that you did, then please comment, like, subscribe, follow the You versus You podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Keep checking me out, and we'll keep busting this thing down.
It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you.